Dear boomers, is freedom something that we have to wait to die to experience? Or is it something that we can experience now? Or is it something we experienced when we were hippies in the 1960s and 70s? And probably always will be somewhat hippie-ish. I described my dog Alfie and her lover Delaney. They were very close dogs. Um, they were both gotten at the pound here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and then they just came with us everywhere we went, including to the San Francisco park where the winos were. And the thing about Alfie that was so interesting was that she had the capacity to look into your eyes for hours, hours. And that is how I came to believe she was my mother. In fact, maybe my mother's spirit had kind of gotten into Alfie to have Alfie let me know that that my life would change and I would have to go into the world again. And as an adult, really, because I left into the wilds of the United States a teenager. And then I became an adult, and Alfie was letting me know as she gazed into my eyes that it was okay, that somehow I would be okay. And she was the goddess of all time. To everybody loved her, and she was so beautiful. So it reminded me of the gazing techniques that Will Johnson discussed on one of. He came on to my show for an hour. We discussed medical. We discussed marijuana and meditation. So that we a part of that um, process, and Will Johnson's process is gazing, and that is something that came about through Rumi's writings, Ramana Maharshi's writings, and we would have workshops where we would gaze into each other's eyes. And I know that that's not easy for people because, as I mentioned before, somewhere that we did this, and one of my friends and I were gazing into each other's eyes, and he suddenly freaked out. And I said, "Oh my gosh, well, you don't worry about it." And I escorted him to the door and gave him a hug, and he went on. We never discussed it again. In fact, he was just over the other day, and that was not what we talked about. But uh, Alfie was by far an elevated being, and so were all the dogs. One of Alfie and Delaney's puppies, we named her Emily. She looked like a miniature Labrador Retriever, which is Delaney was a Labrador Retriever mixed with ooh, I had that word in my mind. Anyway, he was a mixed Labrador, and this little dog looked like a miniature Labrador Retriever. She was the sweetest soul that ever lived. She fell in love with the winos in the park, and she went down to them many a time. And one of the guys, they would go and get her some food and give her canned food, dog food, and finally they took her under their wing, and she had found a group that loved her just as much as we did. But we had too many dogs, so we were happy to let her go. Even maybe society would think giving a dog to winos, possibly homeless winos, wasn't a good idea. But we were not into what society dictated ever. In fact, it's been one of my problems going forward, that society's dictates, even though I do follow laws and I go the speed limit and I stop at stop signs, I have another reality. The thinking of the world is not anything I ascribe to. Thinking of the world with war, with hate, with different kinds of thinking systems, that competition. And I had written something the other day that is not the thinking of the world. All these things are not the thinking of the world. understanding impermanence. Well, everybody in the world believes in permanence. Everything, nothing changes. Don't let me change. Nobody wants to change. And then living in the present moment and not looking at outcome which means you're not living in the present moment if you are looking and depending on any kind of outcome. So we talk about silence and solitude and all these things we learned when we were on the road and when we were living in San Francisco and then onward to our commune in southern Lancaster County. I remember really thinking about intuition and the joy in simple things. And we still had no money when we got to the commune. But so many of our friends who were also kind of outcasts of society would bring us beer and would bring us food and would bring us things to hang out with, and we would just sit. And there was one of the commune guys who was the greatest cook, and when he finally left the commune, he went and cooked at his family's restaurant. But he was with us for quite some time, and I can imagine him coming into the living room where we were all hanging out with a towel draped around his neck. He would bring out food for people to try, and I guess he always was a great cook, I suppose, but he got some of his great cooking abilities at that commune. There's no doubt about it. He's no longer alive, and two of his best friends are no longer alive, and my brother also, who was in that commune, has passed on. So I think about the commune, being on the road, not letting the dogs be leashed. That was another. I would never do that now, but it was like an experiment in living. We were living life in a way that allowed us to have a taste of freedom. Do we want to wait to experience freedom at the time of death, or do we want to know that we experienced freedom in the past, and these adventures of living in the 60s and 70s, we can bring that into our life now? The boomers have stories, the baby boomers have stories that they are reluctant to tell, and they need to face their stories and not think that there's something wrong with telling them or putting their stories into works of art. Yesterday, I went to a book reading of a friend who we knew just after we came back and left the commune. She was a very close friend of ours. She wrote a book, and she was reminding me of someone who broke through a lot of barriers that the baby boomers have regarding technology. She wrote this book. She got it on the page. She had a publisher, and so she is going to come on the channel and she will discuss her process. We have yet to come up with a date, but it's going to be early June. I'm excited because she is a friend and a very artistic person. So the whole thing about freedom is something I've been thinking about. We weren't looking to live normal lives, and as normal as my life is now, I would think that the life of a content creator, and however you do that, content on the internet or content in writing books, those ways of creating works of art are not normal. Anybody can do it, but they choose not to do it. They live in fear. And then this whole idea of boomer homelessness, which is now in the news, that there's a large percentage of us who will run out of our savings, and not just run out of our savings, but live on the streets because the nursing homes are in crisis, the assisted living places are in crisis, and nobody is helping anybody anymore, given the latest political scenario. So, but I don't believe that we need to be fearful about these things. there is a certain amount of magic and miracles that happen every day and every moment, actually. So these moments of miracles and magic are something we can depend on to help us get to the next level. Something's going to happen in an opportunity sort of way that will liberate us. It will be liberating. And this is what the boomers should be concentrating on. I don't really like these statistics and the way they are presented, cold facts. All these people are going to go be homeless, and the millennials or their boomer children won't be able to help them because they're homeless too. And what the hell? Get over it. Okay. So we were not living a normal life. There's no doubt about it. But in the commune, we were living a life that could actually be transferred to our older years. We can have people living together, not just families, but our chosen families can live together and we can help each other. And it could be an artist's commune, where people are single-handedly creating great works of art to take into the world and change the world. So, in essence, freedom was the holy grail of our generation. So many of us were looking to be free in ways that was difficult to translate into a lifestyle that wasn't a little bit crazy. But we were and always will be have this freedom ideal in our hearts. My family was my family of origin was deeply involved with Ammon Hennessy, who called himself a Roman Catholic anarchist. He was a friend of Dorothy Day, who was an icon in the Roman Catholic Church. She came to our house, but Ammon came a lot. He was actually my mother's guru, I would say, especially, I would say at least a spiritual teacher. Ammon Hennessy wrote a book about the one-man revolution. He spent jail time for not paying the war tax, and that was in World War One. And he was in solitary confinement. He had a great deal of resentment towards the warden, his warden, the one that controlled a lot of people with his sadistic attitude. So Ammon was purposely had a lot of grievances towards this guy until and I guess he might have even been in solitary confinement, but all of a sudden he realized that if he could not love this warden, he could not love anybody. I mean, that's a very common spiritual tradition. Love everybody no matter what. So somehow he turned it around. He changed his attitude about the warden, and the warden's attitude towards him changed, and somehow they bonded. And I don't know exactly what happened. I should read the book again. It's I think it's called The Autobiography of Ammon Hennessy, The One Man Revolution. Yes. So we have all these dogs in our lives for so long, and I just introduced you several times to my dog Maso, who's one. Pearl is a little shy, but she is doing well, and she and Maso are pals, and they stare into my eyes too, but nothing like that Alfie. Nothing like Althea Lee. Subscribe to my channel, please, and pretty soon I'm going to create a free Facebook page where we can all go on there and talk to each other about our stories from the 60s and the 70s. We may not want to talk about those sorts of things here on YouTube, but we can do that privately on the Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Dear Boomers. I don't know how if it's actually ready for it, but I'll let you know when it's ready. Thank you so much. Love to you all. Bye-bye.